Hey, what's up guys? Tuki here, back again with another video. I hope it'll be a quick video. At least the first two talking points we'll be able to go through fairly quickly. But I wanted to talk about the NHL 20 beta, of course, a little bit of merch options, and an update as far as roster editing is concerned. So first and foremost, I know a lot of people are wondering what's my opinion on the beta. And, you know, people want to know, you're going to put up a video about it, gameplay highlights. No. And here's why. I'm enjoying the beta for what it is, but we already know that what the beta isn't going to be the final product. EA, of course, released this article where they have all of these changes that are being made, and I'm sure there will be even more on top of this. So what we're playing isn't really a representation of what the game is going to be come the middle of September. So in terms of making a video about like, oh, what do I think they're going to do well, or what do I think the game does well, they might already be changing that. Oh, I think this needs to be fixed. They might already be changing that. So unlike NHL 19 last year, where I was very passionate that, you know, towards the thought that NHL 19 could be either the best hockey game ever made, the best game EA's made in a while, or at the very least the best game of this console generation. Unfortunately, it didn't end up being either or, you know, any of those things. I thought it had the chance. Obviously, last year, I responded to Bacon Country in a video, and I think a lot of people made it think I don't like Bacon Country. I like him. Good enough dude. Never really talked to him, though. But, you know, I was certainly a lot more passionate about that and felt like they were really going in the right direction. With where the beta is, with what I played in April, I still feel like they're going in the right direction, but I don't want to sit here and be like, yeah, this game's going to be amazing. I don't know. It's cautious optimism. That is the word I use the words that I use every single year. But what I look for out of the game isn't necessarily what you look for out of the game or what they plan on having the game be. So time will tell. But as far as the beta is concerned, at this current point in time, I'm enjoying it. I haven't really had too many down points to point out. If you, of course, follow me on Twitch, I know I stream later, but keep in mind VODs are up there, so you can watch streams whenever you want. It's almost like other videos. Twitch.tv/Tuki24. Of course, I stream on a nightly basis. But yeah, if you've been following along there, you'll know that I've been having a lot of fun with it. I mean, hell, the merch option I have to talk about is kind of a spin-off from something that happened on stream, but I've really been enjoying the beta for what it is. I've had a lot of fun with it, and hopefully I'm still as optimistic about the game in, 3 months as I am now. In terms of the merch options, I want to point this out. teespring.com/store/Tuki24-merch. You can also find the link in the description of every video. I dropped a new shirt, and you have multiple different options, if you care to, but the Bunch of Nerds t-shirt. That is a totally original design, I promise you. Yeah, this is a thing. You have the white, black, and blue logo, long sleeve, short sleeve, hoodie. Yeah, fuck, the stickers for it, man. So, yeah, if you just want to support the channel a little bit more, that's out there. And you never know, these could end up being a collector's item. Because if the Carolina Hurricanes decide they want to take offense to it, I'm in trouble. Or Don Cherry, for that matter. It might as well be his intellectual property. But keep in mind on this store, over the next few months, really, I want to get more shirt designs out. Like I said when I initially, announced, I don't want just a shirt with like a T or in the pocket. I want actual shirts. And yeah, this is a pretty damn good start. So shout out to It's NHL on Twitter. ITZNHL on Twitter for helping me out with that design. And again, I know a bunch of you have already picked up one, mainly from the Twitch side of things, and I love you for it. The last thing I wanted to talk about was an update to roster editing. And here's the thing, obviously, there were some points of contention in terms of certain overalls, Carey Price, that a lot of people weren't happy with, and I get that. Now, I still stand by that video, 100%. And again, every change that I've made throughout the year, you can find on the roster editing doc. The link is in the description, of course. And in terms of the process and everything behind that, I at least recommend you check out the beginning of that first video. The editing doc has it in text form as far as, what the process is. But I wanted to give you guys kind of a quick look through every team so you could see And I didn't want to do this, excuse me, I didn't want to do this originally, but it's like, it'll help some people. So I want to just do a quick run through of what these rosters end up looking like. There have been quite a few changes, though, since I put out that video last week. Mainly because I noticed a lot of AI GMs were dropping low top 6 forwards and low top 4 defensemen. So I wanted to rework some things. And you'll notice like Tuukka Rask is up 1 overall point, because I gave some players a little bit of credit, a little bit more credit, either based off of recent performances or legacy, and not Max Lagacé. I'm sorry, that was just, I had to say that at the time. So here's the thing, right? You can look at this and be like, oh, okay, all the players in the right spot. Again, keep in mind, unsigned prospects like Swayman, you'll find the info on the editing doc for that, making sure that guys like Kyle Kaiser are under contract, why they have 4 years, because of, an ELC slide, essentially. You got to have that extra year, all the extension stuff, everything is there. But at the very least, I'll be able to give you guys a look here at what the trade values are for certain players, and, just a quick overview for these teams. So I am going to start scrolling through this just a little bit more quickly. That way, of course, we have 31 teams to get through. I will say, though, to the point of Brad Marchand, and that was the other big one. How dare you have Marchand that highly rated, and how dare you have Carey Price that lowly rated? Those were the two ones that really got some people ruffled, and I get it, in a way. Like I said, the process of, deciding what these are, it's based off of EA's, their setup as far as what makes a first liner, what makes a third liner, stuff like that. So when it comes to Brad Marchand in particular, even though we're scrolling through the Anaheim Ducks here, but when it comes to Brad Marchand in particular, I don't think a lot of people realize that there are only 3 players in the entire NHL over the past 2 years that have been on 100-point paces over the last 2 seasons. Nikita Kucherov, Connor McDavid, and Brad Marchand. Those are the only 3 where, again, point pace over 100 points for each of the last 2 seasons. I get why people don't like Brad Marchand. But if I'm basing things off of the past 2 seasons, the past 3 seasons, it's going to change ratings. And I went off of the past 2 seasons on this occasion rather than 3 to be a little bit more fair towards certain players, because Jordan Binnington's a great example. And Oliver Ekman-Larsson might even be a good example. Keep in mind, check out the Arizona run that I did. It might only end up being those 2 episodes, but it's at least a couple hours worth. Players like OEL, if you think certain guys are underrated, they can get better and will get better. So keep that in mind. But when it comes to having to base things like, say, off of the last 3 seasons, Jordan Binnington, if you use the formula and don't make a special exception for him, he ends up being an even lower overall, because you can't just ignore, you can just ignore what he had done over the past few seasons while he was in the AHL. That's the problem, right? It's subjective. Like, okay, Jordan Binnington's been an AHL goaltender. He gets to the NHL level for 32 games and then goes on a playoff run and wins the Stanley Cup. Are you just going to ignore everything that he had done prior to the past, 50 games that he's played in his career? And if you ignore that for him, then do you base certain players that may have played in the AHL last year but then killed it in the NHL this year? Where do you draw the line in terms of who gets an exception, essentially? So, like I said, when you base it off of the last 2 seasons, yeah, Brad Marchand is going to have one of the highest ratings. That said, I did add a little bit more separation in terms of looking at those 3 guys who are on 100-point paces. We also went through, and I think McDavid now starts at a 94 and Kucherov at a 95, because in terms of who's had the highest point pace over the past 3 seasons, those are the top 3 in order. Kucherov, over the last 2 years, has had the highest point pace. And David Rittich's another good example. If you base it off of his time in the AHL, if you base it off of just last year, sure, make him starter caliber. But that was, of course, one of the big points of contention. And with Carey Price in particular, who, again, I wouldn't rate higher than an 85 or an 86 based off of the past 2 years, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but his career, and it's like, okay, well, is Drew Doughty still a top 5 defenseman in the league? you know, again, that's kind of where it comes in, right? If you want to apply the certain logic to one player, but then you don't apply it to another, you're picking and choosing and you're being a little bit biased. And that's why I followed EA, you know, what EA had set up to the limit without exceptions for the most part, except for some edits that I've made recently. 2 guys like Jordan Binnington and 2 guys like David Riddick, because I mean, I think those are special exceptions to the rule. But when it comes to Carey Price in particular and his 85 to 86 rating, a lot of people are pissed because, oh, well, this past year, yeah, up until December he was bad, but then from there he was Vezina caliber. I wouldn't define an elite goalie as someone who was only good for half the season, would you? Maybe you would. And we also had the 900 save percentage that he had, or in fairness, it was like a 908 or whatever. That low save percentage from now 2 years ago, that was all the defense's fault. His team in front of him was bad. Which, again, you can counterpoint that by saying, well, the Arizona Coyotes finished with even less points, and Antti Raanta had a 930 save percentage to counterbalance Carey Price's sub 910 save percentage. So that was the main thing, I think, that came out of the first scroll through of these teams, is that, you know, at the end of the day, you are applying a generic, arbitrary number to a player in a game where we don't necessarily have enough attributes. I talked about this in the last video. You don't necessarily have enough attributes to really help separate people. And then when you factor in, say Carey Price, it wasn't his fault at all, right? It wasn't his fault. It was truly just the team around him. Well, then what other players get that kind of exception? You know, Drew Doughty. No, he's elite. It's just that the team was bad, so you can't drop his rating that much. I don't know about that. I think great players can perform well on bad teams. I think that happens all the time. I think it's safe to say that an amazing player, one of the best goaltenders of the past decade, Carey Price, had a bad season. He did. He wasn't on the best team in the world, but he also had a bad season. It doesn't have to be, and yes, Columbus's goaltending situation is pretty dire. It doesn't have to be, Carey Price had a bad year, but it's not his fault because he's Carey Price and he's amazing, so it couldn't have possibly been his fault. You can't lower his rating. I don't believe in that. I think it's possible for good players to have bad seasons. I don't think that's a shocking statement to say that Carey Price just wasn't good that year, and as a result, his rating in a video game, for me, takes a little bit of a hit. And that's the thing, you gotta remember, the 2 main things here, 1, it's just what I suggest his rating should be. You don't have to take my word for it. At the end of the day, I'm not the one who, I'm not the one behind EA's official roster. There is no roster sharing. And even if there was, you could always change whatever you wanted to, right? And again, when I don't know, man. I feel like I always have to hit on these same points, right? Totally Spanish. I feel like I always have to hit on these same points. But like I said, it's subjectivity. And we're basing things off of the past 2 to 3 years is typically what I target. So yeah, you're going to have players fluctuate in ratings. You're going to have some guys get a little bit of a boost. But like I mentioned in that initial video that I shared with you guys, where we just took a scroll through the NHL, and yes, Detroit has that many goddamn goalies. Like I mentioned in that video, if you were to look at the past 3 seasons, Carey Price wouldn't be a 90. And you got to think, too, that over the past few seasons, goalie save percentages have been dropping. So obviously, we're going to have some skaters with higher ratings and goalies with lower ratings. That's just how it works. Those are very, very much connected. But anyway, I think that kind of covers all the bases as far as that is concerned. Now, to the point, as we'll continue to scroll through this again so people can get a look, I highly just recommend either going through the roster doc or just wait, because I'll be cleaning up the roster doc, essentially starting it from fresh, even though where I have everybody right here, right now, is exactly how I'm going to set up the roster come the beginning of NHL 20. But, I mean, unless they've changed certain things to, you know, for trade value or whatever, I know that was something that myself and other game changers that were there in April discussed as far as like, hey, changing values. And I hope, especially based on the time of year, that we are close to them announcing changes to franchise mode. I mean, there's stuff that has been announced, you know, like the hireable and fireable coaches, but there's other things that haven't been announced yet, so I can't talk about them yet that I do know. Again, I think people are going to like the changes, but for the most part, when it comes to the roster, this will pretty much be the setup. So I'll be cleaning up the roster editing doc, essentially starting it from the beginning, and that way it'll be much easier to follow. So perhaps it would be worth waiting in the meantime, just for the beginning of the new year. Like I said, for me, to help differentiate what I do in terms of franchise modes, to have different players be successful, this is worth it to me. Not to mention, I mean, I'm not going to call it OCD because I think that would be making light of people who actually suffer from OCD. But I just really like to have what I consider to be more accurate rosters. Of course, you can debate the overalls and the potentials, and that's fine. But in terms of teams having prospects that EA can't add, in terms of there being prospects in the draft that that EA cannot add, like I've mentioned, I have been doing this for years because I'm that big of a loser. But I have been doing this for years in terms of kind of updating everything. So for me, it's something, in fairness, if I wasn't on YouTube or Twitch right now, I might have finally given up hope. I don't know. But like I said, it's just, it makes franchise mode more enjoyable for me. And to the point of franchise mode, again, we will be winding down the Carolina Hurricanes series very, very soon. And the new series already in the works. It will be beginning this week, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, but it will be beginning soon. And yes, the Minnesota Wild have a lot of forwards. Jesus, we looked at their goaltending, right? Yeah, we definitely did. The Montreal Canadiens. I bumped Gary Price back. Gary Price is an 86. Again, it's the highest I'm going for him. Fight me about it. Montreal is actually going to be a very interesting team, and I'm intrigued to see how that first franchise mode goes. And by first, I mean the first with this roster, and subsequently the last, because we are at the end of the road for NHL 19. But really intrigued to see how this final franchise mode goes. Although for those of you who have made it to this point in the video, whether or not you're actually intrigued at knowing what everything looks like, or whether or not you're using me for background noise, I will let you know there's only going to be one series here at the end of the year, because I feel like if I were to alternate and have an every other day like we did with Finland and Carolina, I wouldn't be able to get far enough into it. So it's just one final series. We'll get at least 30 episodes out of it through the month of August, and then and really through the early stages of September, and then we will be good to go for NHL 20, which I'm pretty excited about. Like I said, when it comes to the beta 2, enjoying it, but what are your thoughts on it? It's fine, but it's not NHL 20, or at least not what NHL 20 is going to be, right? So there has to be that change. There just has to be. But hopefully, once we get that final series going, the AI is a little bit smarter, a little bit more aware of building their team. Here's hoping. Here is hoping. And we will continue to scroll through here. We're over the halfway point. So at this point, we're good to go. I'm feeling all right. So obviously, in terms of like, 100% filling out the AHL teams, not quite. But obviously the roster doc will have that, so should be good. Every tool should be there for you to use. I can't believe Varlamov's trade value is actually that high. That's kind of surprising to me. It probably... Goalie trade value in NHL 19 is a weird one anyway, especially when it comes to, prospects in the draft and just how those elite and franchise level goalies, number one, there were far too many of them, and secondly, their trade values were way too high. And if you didn't have essentially your own set rules on how you were playing, you would end up exploiting it. It's almost impossible not to. You would have to actively avoid players of that caliber because they were everywhere. Just everywhere. Fairly ridiculous, if you ask me. But again, hoping that they've made changes for the better. Maybe they have. Maybe I'm just not allowed to talk about them yet. You ever think about that? I've said it on Twitch and on Twitter quite a few times. Be excited for franchise mode in NHL 20. I think I can say this. Don't expect them to reinvent the wheel. I think whether it's FIFA, Madden, NBA, MLB, sure, in terms of tuning what's already there, yeah, they can make that better. But we're at the end of a console generation. NHL 20 isn't going to be, this incredible. And as it is, I mean, in saying that, I guess the argument would be, oh, well, I was hoping the game would be better because you look at the end of the last console generation, the 360 and the PS3, and God, NHL 13 and 14 were great. Even 15 on 360 was great. And then you got to, of course, 15 and 16 on the next-gen consoles, i.e. the current-gen consoles of the Xbox One and the PS4, and you see what those were, and yeah. But I think people who are getting their hopes up for these... I'm not saying don't expect a lot out of devs. I mean, you should. You should be challenging video game developers to actually be putting in the work and not half-assing things, especially too when the optics for a company like EA are, pretty much, all they care about is, surprise mechanics, basically. Which I think too, obviously, Ultimate Team is such a big thing for EA and microtransactions in general, such a big thing for all these different companies. But I think you gotta kind of have tempered expectations. Timing is everything. And with, Project Scarlet announced and stuff like that, are we really expecting these games to take the next step? Do we expect the games to look drastically different at this point? Of course the NHL 20 beta, with the exception of, the changes in presentation because of the, they're not associated with NBC anymore. Aside from that, of course player models pretty much look the same. Of course the game pretty much looks the same. You look back at NHL 12, of course NHL 14 isn't that much different. It's all a matter of timing in that regard. But when it comes to the changes they have actually made, I mean, yeah, in terms of gameplay, you can tell that was the big focus for NHL 20. And as far as whether or not they've hit the mark, we don't know yet. The beta only gives us a hint of what NHL 20 could be, for better or worse, which, again, that's the only way I can feel about it. That was on my mind when I knew I was going to kind of talk about this today, as far as the, especially too when people are asking, the beta, are you going to make a video for that? And it's man, I can't. It's I think the shooting's good now. It might not be in 2 months, or when the game drops, or in 4 months. Who knows? It's tough because I'm not, I stand by my statement last year. It's not a matter of me being I don't want to say this game's going to be great, and then it's not, and then I look stupid. No, I don't give a shit about looking stupid. If I did, I wouldn't put my fat face on the internet. But I almost don't want to put the game into that light for myself in terms of thinking yeah, let's go. I think that's just the way I handle things in general. I'm a little bit more pessimistic to the point where it's okay, but if this does work out and it's amazing, it's going to be that much better. It's okay, I don't expect to get anything on Christmas, and if I get one gift, then holy hell, I'm pumped. I got a gift. Same thing with NHL. And any game at this point in time, I mean, Jesus, you have well-known, established, highly reputable dev teams or studios, Bethesda, putting out garbage products left and right. At this point, it's kind of better to have that cautious optimism in terms of okay, NHL 20 beta, kind of digging it, but the game might not end up being all that fun for me. here's hoping it is. It's pretty much the only way I can view it. So, you know, in terms of making a video, it doesn't want to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to praise them for this and rip them apart for this, for what's in the beta, because what the beta is doesn't represent what they're working on as you're probably listening to this at their studio. Now, Nikita Gusev's actually down to low 6, or low top 9. I put him at low elite, so case in point, certain ratings can auto-adjust. As we are down to the last 2 teams. Washington, a lot of people are like, Ovechkin's only a 90? Look at that shooting category, dog, and that offensive awareness. He's still a beast. He is still an absolute beast. But anyway, boy, a lot of different topics of conversation today, but I knew I wanted to make this video, and I don't regret it. And again, a shout out to you. Like I said, if you were just using this video for background noise, I appreciate that for sure. Helps the metrics of the channel, the old watch time, even though it's not the most important thing for YouTube anymore. I don't even know. They change what's important. But whether or not you were using this to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to try to copy this as best I can, or whatever else, you know, other talking points as far as like, oh, okay, well, I thought this rating was low or high, and based off of the trade value, it is or it isn't, you know, stuff like that. Just wanted to include that. Even Patrick Laine being down to a medium elite, which I think is fair, he still has all the trade value in the world because he's an 85 medium elite at 20 years old. So that is how the teams are established. That will do it for this video. I got other stuff to record, but again, thank you for checking this out. I do look forward to NHL 20's launch. Of course, very much looking forward to the start of the new series. And again, teespring.com/stores/Toogie24-merch. If you want to support the channel, if you want to put teas on my dog's table, I can't say the T word because Emmy's in the room, but you know what I mean. And I won't say it because you might have a dog in the area, and I don't want to encourage you overfeeding your pets. Yeah. Thank you. I'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Take it easy. And goodbye.